So, let's talk about Nigeria. It's one of Africa's economic powerhouses, a major oil producer, and it's made a really bold promise to hit net zero emissions. But how does a nation so tied to fossil fuels even begin to tackle one of the most ambitious climate goals on the continent? Well, today we're going to break down the plan, the absolutely staggering price tag, and the paradox that's right at the heart of Nigeria's green mission.
Here it is. That's the target date, 2060. This is the year Nigeria has promised to achieve net zero. Now, to put that in perspective, yeah, it's a decade later than a lot of Western nations, but for Africa's most populous country, it represents an immense challenge. We're talking a complete overhaul of its entire economy.
So what does net zero actually mean? Officially, it's a commitment that by 2060, any greenhouse gas emissions the country still produces will be completely balanced out by actions that pull those same gases out of the atmosphere. It is a huge target, especially, for a major oil-producing nation.
Okay, but to really understand this plan, we've got to wrap our heads around a key paradox first. Nigeria's whole emissions story is full of contradictions, and that makes its journey to net zero totally unique. And this is where things get really interesting. On one hand, because of its huge population and economy, Nigeria is a major global player in emissions. We're talking top 25 in the world for total volume. But on the other hand, if you look at the average Nigerian, their personal carbon footprint is tiny, less than a third of the global average. So the key takeaway here is that Nigeria is dealing with a massive, country-level problem, even though its individual citizens have a really small impact.
Now have a look at where those emissions are actually coming from. You'd probably expect oil and gas to be the runaway leader, right? And it is a huge contributor, at almost 30%. But look at what's right there with it, neck and neck, AFLU. That stands for agriculture, forestry, and other land use. Together, just these two sectors make up almost 60% of all of Nigeria's emissions. That tells you everything you need to know. Any serious plan has to tackle both fossil fuels and how the land is being used.
So how is Nigeria planning to do that? Well, the entire strategy, the whole thing, is built on the foundation of one single, really powerful piece of legislation, the Climate Change Act. The Climate Change Act of 2021 is basically the engine for this entire mission. This isn't just some vague promise. It's designed to be the actual rulebook, the machinery, the targets, the institutions, the regulations that will steer the entire country toward a low-carbon future.
So, how does it work? Well, it's got 4 key parts. First, it creates a super powerful council to lead the charge. Second, it demands concrete 5-year action plans, so you can't just kick the can down the road. Third, it introduces a system of national carbon budgets, which is a great idea. It's basically a cap on the total emissions the country is allowed over a certain period, just like a financial budget limits how much you can spend. And finally, it makes it a legal requirement for both the government and private companies to get on board.
And just look at who's in charge of this thing. The National Council on Climate Change, the NCCC, isn't some low-level committee. It's chaired by the President of Nigeria himself, with the Vice President as his number 2. It brings all the key players to the table: environment, petroleum, finance, plus folks from the private sector and civil society. This whole structure is designed to give it massive political muscle and make sure everyone is working together. Okay, so we've got the law on paper. But what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's dig into the specifics of how Nigeria plans to slash emissions in those key sectors we talked about.
The long road to 2060 is paved with some really important deadlines. 2 of the biggest are coming up in 2030. First, a hard stop to the wasteful practice of routine gas flaring in oil fields, and second, an ambitious goal to cut emissions by 47%. But, and this is a huge but, that bigger cut is conditional. It really depends on getting significant support from the international community.
For the big one, energy, oil, and gas, the plan is to attack it from all sides. We're talking a huge push for renewables, like solar and hydro, aiming for them to make up over 60% of the power grid. And it's not just about ending gas flaring, but actually capturing that gas and putting it to use. The strategy also targets a near-total stop to methane leaks, and, on top of all that, a massive shift to get people driving electric and ethanol cars.
And for that other huge emitter, FOU, the strategy is all about transformation. The goal is to basically flip the script, to turn it from a source of emissions into a solution. This means using smarter farming techniques to cut methane from livestock, launching a major reforestation campaign, and restoring natural ecosystems like wetlands. The ultimate goal? For Nigeria's lands and forests to actually absorb more carbon than they release.
A world-class plan is one thing, but, a green future isn't free.
And this brings us to the elephant in the room, the money. How on earth is Nigeria going to pay for this massive national transformation?
Okay, get ready for this number. $859 billion US. That is the estimated price tag for the most ambitious version of Nigeria's plan. I mean, the sheer scale of that figure is just mind-boggling, and it really highlights the monumental challenge ahead.
But context here is everything. That $859 billion figure comes with a really important footnote. As the country's own report says, this is the estimated need for international aid to fund the best-case, most ambitious scenario. So Nigeria isn't expected to just come up with this on its own. The success of the whole plan is directly tied to getting that external financial support. That said, Nigeria isn't just sitting around waiting for handouts. The Climate Change Act sets up a special fund, and they're casting a really wide net for money. We're talking funds from the national budget, grants from international partners, issuing green bonds to investors, setting up carbon taxes, and, this is a big one, attracting a lot of investment from the private sector.
So all of this leads to a fork in the road. The choices being made right now on policy, on investment, on global cooperation are going to lead to two completely, drastically different futures for Nigeria.
And this chart just lays out the stakes perfectly. Look at this comparison. If things just keep going as they are, business as usual, Nigeria's emissions would more than double by 2060. But under the ambitious renewable energy plan, that number plummets to just 14. That's a stunning 97% reduction. And when you see it as a bar chart like this, the difference is just, whoa, it's so stark. I mean, this isn't a small change. It's a fundamental choice between two totally different worlds. That tiny little green bar, that's what this entire, complex, multi-billion-dollar strategy is all about. Which brings us to our final question. On one side, you have Nigeria with this clear, comprehensive, and legally backed roadmap. It's truly world-class. On the other side, you have a colossal funding gap. The whole story here is the tension between that incredible ambition and the resources needed to make it happen. Can Nigeria bridge that gap? And in doing so, could it provide a blueprint for a green transition for the rest of Africa? Well, that remains the $859 billion question.